Hello, Marvel fans, and welcome to episode 1 of Assemble. This is your Marvel Cinematic Universe crash course. My name's Mallory, and I'm here with Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. So I actually went late into the game with the Avengers movies. My first Marvel movie was technically Avengers Age of Ultron. That was the first one I saw in theaters. But then I fell in love with the cinematic universe, and I caught up, and I watched every single one since.
Yeah, it's a pretty awesome thing, and we're here to talk to you about it. We're going to start off today. This is kind of like our little introduction to the universe. We're going to talk about Phase 1. For those who don't know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've seen 3 phases so far. And so far we've, established the Avengers and added to it, and we're coming up on this huge pinnacle movie for the series, Infinity Wars.
Yes.
And that comes out in May. So we want to get you prepared to go into the theater with confidence if you haven't seen all these movies, so you can enjoy it just like the rest of us.
So Phase 1 includes Iron Man, the Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, the First Avenger, and of course, the First Avengers. So like Mallory said, we are doing the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So anything that has to deal with the Marvel Cinematic Universe we are going to talk about. Unfortunately, we are not going to be talking about the comic books because it's such an expanded world that it's too much to cover.
Yeah, the comic books are great, and they're very important to the movies, but, of course, this comic books cover so much, and you can't show everything that Stan Lee has written in comic books and like so many other people that have gotten involved with Marvel.
And you can't show like every single Easter egg and every single...
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about the comic books, but we are going to be talking about the Infinity Stones.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about Stan Lee and how he's in every single Marvel movie to date. We are also going to be talking about, the end credit scenes and how they connect each movie together.
Yep, so we can just get started here. We're going to go through each movie and give you kind of the basic points and talk about these really important characters that pop up.
Okay, so the first movie in Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Iron Man. Iron Man introduces us to Tony Stark, who's played by Robert Downey Jr., who eventually becomes Iron Man.
Mm-hmm.
There's also Rhodey, who's played by Terrence Howard, but is later recast by Don Cheadle.
Yeah, that definitely confused me because there was this different person, and I'm like, who is this? But
I thought I was watching a knockoff film there for a second when I was first watching it. I was like, what?
Yeah, don't let it confuse you. Rhodey did get recast.
Okay, and then there's also Pepper Potts, who is played by Gwyneth Paltrow, Jarvis, of course, and then it's the first introduction of SHIELD, which stands for Strategic Homeland Intervention Enforcement and Logistics Division.
Yep, so we start off Iron Man with Tony Stark. He's this selfish, kind of spoiled brat. He inherited Stark Industries from his father. And Stark Industries starts off as a weapons dealer. They're really involved in the war in Afghanistan. And Tony actually ends up going to Afghanistan to test out his Jericho missile. It's like this crazy, powerful missile that kind of just wrecks everything.
Like everything.
Yeah. So after this presentation, Tony's
riding with convoy.
Yeah. Tony's convoy is ambushed where he a bunch of people die that he has just met. And Tony is severely wounded, and he's captured by these terrorists with the purpose of having Tony build this terrorist group, who is later called the Ten Rings.
They wanted the Jericho missile.
Yeah, they want to get their hands on the Jericho missile because they saw how powerful it is, and they know how inventive Tony is because they're using all of his weapons, and yeah, they see the destructive capabilities. But in the midst of this ambush, Tony gets impaled by a lot of shrapnel, and he's actually saved by this captive doctor that's also being held by the Ten Rings, who installs a electromagnet in his chest to prevent that shrapnel from entering his heart. So that's kind of the deal with his glowing chest, if you didn't know. And at first it's run on a car battery, but he very quickly makes his own little arc reactor to power that electromagnet and keep himself alive, basically. So in his captivity, instead of creating the Jericho missile, he decides to create this first suit of armor. And this is what we see as the first Iron Man. And of course, the terrorists aren't taking very well to that.
Yeah.
So he manages to hide it until it's done, basically. He ends his captivity in a shootout where he kills several of his captors and this doctor, which I haven't named yet. His name is
Jensen.
He actually ends up getting killed in this fight for Tony's freedom. And then the death of Jensen actually kind of sets Tony off on like this rampage he goes through, and he burns all of the Ten Rings weapons that are lying around, and he ends up like just like flying away unexpectedly in this crazy clunky suit that he built.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he ends up crashing himself into the desert, and like luckily he gets found and brought back to his home
By Rhodey.
Yeah, by Rhodey.
He's like, the convoy, Rhodey, how is this party convoy going?
Yeah. When he gets back home, this is actually really important and like a really big growing point for Tony. He announces that Stark Industries will no longer be manufacturing weapons, which, you know, pisses a lot of people off naturally. And he gets home and builds himself a new and improved version of the suit that he made in captivity that's powered on this new arc reactor that he built that's, you know, newer and more powerful to run this suit as well. Vanessa, do you want to tell us how this movie ends?
Okay, sure. So Obadiah, Tony Stark's pseudo dad / friend, is angry about them not building weapons. Then you learn that, of course, that it was Obadiah who orchestrated his convoy getting attacked and him going into the cave and trying to build the Jericho missile for the Ten Rings terrorists group. So he has Pepper try to figure out what's going on. And Pepper goes into Stark Industries because Stark has been locked out. And she finds out that he's trying to build his own version of the Iron Man suit. A fight ensues. Obadiah falls into the arc reactor and dies. Mm-hmm. And it kind of spawns Tony to be more distrustful of people, I think, more character development-wise.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
He really trusted Obadiah, and, you know, in the end, he got betrayed.
Yeah, he stabbed him in the back, like, hardcore.
Hardcore, yeah. In the post-credit scene, we see Nick Fury trying to bring up the Avenger initiative. He was trying to recruit Tony.
Right. And, like, at this time, we've never seen Nick Fury before. Like, we've never seen this strange man with an eye patch. Like, we're like, what the heck is this thing? What the heck is the Avenger initiative? And what does this mean for, like, you know, the rest of the universe?
Okay, so some important points to note. Tony embraces his superhero persona. I mean, he goes in front of a press conference and says, I am Iron Man. He wasn't trying to live in the shadows like every other superhero that we've seen so far in different cinematic.
Kind of a superhero, like, double life cliche. Like,
yeah, like Superman, you know.
Tony
like,
Stark is Iron Man, and Iron Man is Tony Stark. Like.
And everyone freaks out, and, you know, he becomes better morally, I believe, throughout this film, because he saw what his weapons were doing, and he decided to take action and become more responsible, which you didn't see throughout the entire film until that point happened.
Yeah. We can move on to the Incredible Hulk here. This is kind of the whipping boy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's still important to talk about. It came out in 2008, and this movie gave us Bruce Banner, who becomes incredibly important in the universe after. He's played by Edward Norton in this movie, but he's later replaced by Mark Ruffalo, which I think is another kind of blow to this movie, because people are kind of salty that...
Like, I know a lot of people that don't believe that they need to watch this film to make it for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's just a throwaway film. But when you look at it and you look at all the plot points, it doesn't really give you anything except for really the end credit scene.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot that is super important about this movie. Like, it's important to know his backstory, but other than that, it kind of just, it could be swept under the rug. You
could probably skip it and not really miss anything, to be honest with you. But, okay, so what are the important plot points, Mallory?
All right, so a little bit of Hulk's backstory. Bruce Banner is a scientist. He's working on this experiment that supposedly would give humans, you know, immunity to gamma radiation. And this is part of the super soldier experiment after World War II, which we'll learn about very soon in the universe. This program is being closely observed by the U.S. government. The general kind of in charge of this whole thing is named General Thaddeus or Thunderbolt Ross. Banner kind of gets sick of waiting around for results, and he gets tired of testing on animals. And so eventually he just decides to test his experiment on himself.
Which is bad science practices.
That is and not proper experimentation technique. And this experiment gone wrong turns him into this raging green monster that is later termed the Hulk. He kind of just destroys everything in sight, and he becomes a fugitive from the U.S. government because he's caused harms, and now he's, hiding kind of like...
Alter ego?
Yeah. Like, he doesn't want anybody to know that he's Hulk.
Is it like Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? I feel like that's kind of what they were going for this movie.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. But basically, the rest of the movie is like this kind of goose chase to find the Hulk. And when they're unsuccessful, another... Was he a general?
I believe he was... I think he wasn't a general. I believe he was a lieutenant or something.
Okay.
That he was trying to make his way up to the general.
Yeah. So he has the stupid idea of injecting himself with the blood of the Hulk and the super soldier serum.
Of course, another bad science practice. But
yeah. So this turns him also into a raging monster.
Called the Abomination.
Yeah, he's called the Abomination.
Which sounds so much scarier than the Hulk. I have to put that out there.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, the movie ends in this crazy fight scene between these two monsters. And, naturally, Bruce Banner as Hulk wins. At the end of the movie, we can kind of see Hulk kind of learning to accept what he is and kind of start to get a control on it so he's not so raging. Which is definitely important. Another thing that we see also is Banner's love interest kind of come and go, which I think is important for Bruce Banner later on because this movie kind of set up the idea that like Bruce Banner tries to get close, like the Hulk takes that away from him. And that can kind of explain some of like Bruce Banner's behavioral issues later on in the universe, although we haven't totally explored them. So yeah, that's about it for The Incredible Hulk.
The post-credit scene.
Oh yeah, can't forget that.
Yeah, so the post-credit scene was Tony Stark was looking for Banner and approaches General Ross and to tell him, what if I told you we were getting a team together? So you can see that they're trying to get the Avengers initiative off the ground.
Yeah. All right, so Iron Man 2 came out in 2010. That's 2 years after the first Iron Man movie. And it just kind of expands and continues on these characters that we've already met and that we'll continue to see, like Tony Stark and Pepper Potts and Rhodey. But we also get to see more of these newer characters that we haven't quite figured out yet, like Nick Fury. And we're going to meet Natasha Romanoff, who, is the Black Widow in the Avengers. That's super important. Vanessa, do you want to tell us what happens?
Okay, cool. So technically with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, their timeline is a little wobbly. Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey kind of thing. But so technically it's supposed to be 6 months after the first Iron Man.
Yeah.
The government really wants the designs to the Iron Man suit because they feel like it's going to help them in the war effort. And Tony believes that if he gives up his suits, he's giving up a part of himself. So he's like, nah, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So, of course, there's that contention there. And then, so worried about his safety, Pepper hires an assistant to help him out. While this is all happening, Tony is actually getting poisoned by the arc reactor in his chest. He's getting poisoned by palladium.
Right.
So he believes he's going to die anyways. Because he's freaking out and how he thinks he's going to die.
Yeah.
He makes Pepper the new head of Stark Industries.
Yeah,
the CEO, thank you. I was like, I can't remember. But yeah, there's an evil guy trying to defeat him, I guess, because technically he was angry because his father had
his father worked with Howard Stark.
Thank you.
And Howard Stark kind of screwed him over.
Yeah.
Screwed him out of his designs and had him deported
to like Russia.
Back to Russia, which tells us a lot about Howard Stark, but yeah.
Like in general, he's just kind of a horrible person.
Yeah,
but
he's very shady.
Yes, very shady. And so the son of the guy that helped Howard Stark gets angry and he decides to build himself electrified whips and tries to take down Tony at a race in Italy, which he, Tony freaking out. He's driving the car because he thinks it's going to be his last few days. Okay, and then Tony has a birthday because, last birthday, you got to live it like no other.
Yep.
He's actually in the suit and he's partying with all these ladies and he actually pees in the suit, which is kind of nasty.
Yeah.
But I felt like that was important to talk about. Anyways.
He's going off the deep end.
Yeah, exactly. But his best friend Rhodey, who's now being played by Don Cheadle, is like, no, I'm not going to have it, and decides to take the Mark II, which is another version of his suit, and beat the crap out of Tony, and then fly away with the suit and give it to the Air Force so they can try to replicate his designs.
Yep.
Okay, and then Nick Fury actually shows up and was saying that the new assistant isn't just some pretty young face to look at. It's actually Natasha Romanoff, who is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent who later becomes Black Widow. And she was tasked into protecting Stark. You learn that Fury and Howard Stark, had a interesting relationship.
Yeah, so Nick Fury was good friends with Tony's father, and he brings some of Howard's stuff and gives it to Tony, which kind of gives us a little bit of look into Howard Stark's relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. and the government. And
Tony in general, because there was a home video of him and Tony playing with the little map that he received, and Howard's like, don't touch anything. But there's a reason why he can't touch anything with that map. It's because when you turn it to the side, it looks like a new element, and it cures his poisoning of palladium.
Yeah, so Tony is able to create this new arc reactor that ends up saving his life and getting him away from the palladium that was killing him ever so slowly. Skipping forward to the kind of wrap-up of the movie, we're at the Stark Expo, and one of Tony's rivals, named Justin Hammer, reveals some Iron Man suit duplicates, but they're drones, and they're headed by Rhodey. But they kind of take the Iron Man suit to the next level with all these guns and American patriotic
paint job.
Decorations. I don't know. It's ridiculous. These drones end up being powered by Benko, this guy that was trying to kill Tony with these electric whips. The drones are just raining terror, and not even Rhodey has control of his suit, which thankfully from Natasha, he was able to get control back and tried to help Tony, destroy these drones and eventually take out Benko.
At the end of the film, Nick Fury talks to Tony Stark and says, because of your attitude, you're only going to be a consultant. You're not going to be a main person in the Avengers initiative.
Yeah.
He felt like he was too much of a, no pun intended, flight risk. And also in the other post-credit scene, Phil Coulson actually arrives with a weird hammer in the middle of New Mexico in a crater.
Yeah, what is that?
I know, magic hammers. That's crazy. So with the important points of this film, we already kind of talked about how Howard Stark's kind of shady in his dealings and how he kind of acts around Tony.
Yeah.
But then you also get to learn that, S.H.I.E.L.D. is actually developing. It's not a faceless organization that you see in Iron Man 1. They are slowly developing into this, power force.
Yeah, we're learning more and more about this, weird organization
that you were like, that's just a weird acronym.
Yeah, for sure.
And then, fun fact, the child that was helping with the Stark Expo, that had the little gauntlet that was trying to defeat the little drones, we come to find out later on that was Peter Parker.
Yeah, so amazingly, Peter Parker actually makes a cameo in this movie.
It's not Tom Holland, but it's his character, which is cool.
I don't know. Cool fun fact to wrap up our discussion of Iron Man 2.
So after Iron Man 2, there's Thor, which comes out in 2011, and it introduces you to, of course, Thor, who's played by Chris Hemsworth, and Loki, who's played by Tom Hiddleston, who become integral in the Avengers. There's also Jane Foster, who's played by Natalie Portman, Odin, who's Anthony Hopkins, and then you're introduced to a scientist named Dr. Eric Selvig, Mjolnir, it's not Mjolnir, which is a magic hammer, and also unnamed in this movie, but is wielding a bow and arrow, is Hawkeye.
Yep.
So, Mallory, what are the main plot points in this film?
Well, Thor opens up kind of introducing us to these two races in this realm that, humans don't know. We've got the Asgardians, which...
based on Norse for us.
Yeah. Thor and Odin are both Asgardians, and we have their kind of historical rivals, the Frost Giants. They've been in kind of a sticky rivalry for...
eons.
Yeah.
I think it's a long time.
A very, very long time. So Thor is about to become king of Asgard by Odin. His father is getting old and is ready to pass on his throne to his eldest son. And then it turns out the frost giants are trying to break into Asgard to retrieve this relic
that they stolen.
That the Asgardians had stolen from the frost giants in one of their previous
raids,
battles. Whatever Asgardians do. So Thor gets super angry and ends up going to confront the frost giants, which makes Odin crazy mad.
Like crazy. Not even like
Odin ends up like saving the day basically, like, but in that anger he strips Thor of his powers and kind of exiles him from Earth.
To Earth. Not
Earth.
From Earth.
Yeah, to Earth.
But he is also stripped of his hammer, which all of his godly powers are put into that hammer called Mjolnir.
Yep.
And that just happens to go to Earth too. Where do they land? New Mexico.
New Mexico. What? Yeah, so there he quickly meets Jane Foster. She is a astrophysicist. She's got this crazy technology that's trying to read some of these, I guess we would call it magical, like signals from outer space, and like the wormhole that Thor came from, like sent her technology wild. So they meet up, and then this part of the movie is kind of like Thor figuring out what Earth is and how to behave like a person and not an Asgardian. So the antics are really cool. It's a fun movie. Meanwhile, back in Asgard, Loki learns that he is not an Asgardian, but indeed a frost giant. And that sets off some crazy power struggles with him and his father, and kind of explains some of the power struggles between him and Thor. So Odin ends up going into what we call Odin sleep, and Loki is given the throne because his brother is on Earth and his adopted father is asleep. And in that power, he, makes a plot with the frost giants to, take back this relic that the Asgardians stole from them and kill Odin. Some of Thor's friends, they're called the Warriors 3, are trying to convince Loki to, bring Thor back. And Loki hates that, of course.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not having it.
It's like, no.
He's like, gonna ruin my plan, man.
Yeah.
So the Warriors 3 got angry, and they decided that they are going to go to Earth to try to bring Thor back. And while the Warriors 3 were down in Earth trying to bring Thor back, Loki, because he can't have his plan being messed up, sent the Guardian of the Vault, which is like this robot-y, ethereal, you can't kill demon-looking thing.
Yeah.
And decides to send it to where Thor is. With Thor not having his powers, it's kind of an uneven match.
Yeah, for sure. But luckily, during that fight, he proves himself worthy again. That's a term that we hear in these Thor movies a lot.
You're not worthy?
Yeah, you're not worthy, or you're all not worthy. So he regains his worth, and his hammer returns to him.
Mjolnir.
Yeah.
It's just fun to
Mjolnir.
say.
Comes back to him, and it gives him the upper hand that he needs to
defeat the
destroyer and get himself back to Asgard to figure out what's going on.
Again, in Asgard, Laufey, who is Loki's biological dad, comes in and tries to kill Odin, but we come to find out that that was Loki's plan all along, that was giving him an excuse to kill Laufey and destroy the frost giants.
Yes, there's lots of plans over plans over plans in this movie.
Especially with Loki.
Loki is the trickster and causes a lot of issues, and we're going to talk about that some more at the end.
Yeah.
When we get to the Avengers. So just bear with us a little bit.
So Thor comes back to Asgard. Loki and Thor battle it out.
Mm-hmm.
Odin wakes up from his sleep, which is a bad time to take a sleep, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Loki, feeling that he is inadequate and being mistreated by his family, he decides to say, kind of like, screw it, and he falls, air quotes, to his death, and everyone mourns him and believes that he is dead.
Yep. And that pretty much ends the movie. We've got Jane back on Earth trying to use
Thor.
her machinery to find Thor. And we've got an interesting end credit scene. Dr. Selvig, who's working with Jane Foster, I don't know if we mentioned that, is taken to S.H.I.E.L.D. and he kind of shares some of the information that he has with S.H.I.E.L.D. And Nick Fury actually takes out what we know now as the Tesseract, but it's a weird blue cube. Yeah.
It's glowing.
Yeah, it's glowing. we don't know what the heck this thing is. And then Fury explains to Selvig that this thing has a crazy amount of power and that they need his help in
getting that power from the Tesseract.
Harnessing that. That's the word I was looking for. Harnessing that power.
Okay. But meanwhile, when we see invisibly that Loki, who is not dead, is actually prompting Selvig to agree to the arrangement so he can get the Tesseract.
Yes. And that is where Thor ends. One thing that I think we forgot to mention is that we see Hawkeye in here. S.H.I.E.L.D. had built this facility around Thor's hammer in this crater that they found in the middle of the desert because they don't know what it is.
And they can't move it because they're not worthy.
And they can't move it. So Thor hears about it and tries to go retrieve it. But, of course, he is also not worthy. So he can't pick it up, and we see Hawkeye, and again, he's not named in this movie, trying to chase him down with the bow and try to...
He was more in a perch just watching him.
Yeah, I guess. There wasn't any chasing, but...
But he was kind of rooting for him to pick up the hammer, but when he didn't, he was kind of like, okay, I'm done. And then I think he shot him with an arrow, didn't he? I believe he did.
I don't recall.
But that was the first appearance of Hawkeye. And then some important points, of course. This movie kind of starts showing the rift between Thor and Loki, and how Loki always feels like he's the one pushed aside. Whereas Thor honestly just loves his brother. No, he even knows that he's adopted, but he still loves him.
Yeah.
Like, unconditionally.
Yeah.
But Loki's just not having it. And then we get the first glimpse of the Tesseract, which we know later houses the Space Stone for the Infinity Gauntlet. And on Infinity Gauntlet, when they're invading the vault, you actually see in the background the Infinity Gauntlet. But we come to find out later that it's an actual fake, and Odin is lying to protect the universe.
Next in Phase 1, we have Captain America, the First Avenger. It also came out in 2011. In this movie, we meet Steve Rogers, played by the beautiful Chris Evans.
Yeah.
And Bucky Barnes, played by Sebastian Stan.
He's also pretty beautiful, too.
Yeah, he is. We meet Dr. Abraham Erskine?
I think he's German, so it's Erskine?
Yeah.
It feels like that's better.
Okay. We meet Peggy Carter. We see Howard Stark.
In his younger days,
yes. He's played by Dominic Cooper. And Nick Fury, who's played by Samuel L. Jackson, of course. Couldn't have it any other way. All right.
Okay, so, but the main plot of Captain America, the First Avenger, is you see this scrawny kid named Steve Rogers, and he's trying to get into the military. But unfortunately, he got denied because he had a lot of health issues. He had asthma, and he just pretty much couldn't cut it.
Yep.
He was very short, too. Then you see him saddened because he's didn't get to make it into the war. That he's walking home, and he actually gets beat up by a bigger guy. So you see Sergeant James Bucky Barnes come to his rescue, and Bucky says that he's getting shipped out the next day. And he says that he wants to go to a technologies fair. And of course, Rogers, being the best friend that he is, decides to go with him. And at this technologies fair, it's an actual Stark technology fair. You see Howard Stark trying to show off his inventions, and his inventions of the flying car doesn't really go very well. But while doing this, Steve sees another recruitment booth, thank you, and decides that he's going to try. Bucky warns him that lying on an enlistment form is a felony, and he will get arrested, but Steve, being the kind of person that he is, just wanted to join the military because he feels that it's his American duty.
Yeah, he wants to fight for his country.
Yeah. So he lies on his enlistment form of where he's from, and of course he gets caught.
Mm-hmm.
And a doctor there named Dr. Erskine says that he can give him a chance. So he is recruited for the
SSR, the
SSR.
Strategic Scientific Reserve. Yeah, and they're developing their super soldier experiment.
Okay. And he meets Peggy Carter there, and she's one of the only women agents. So no one believes that Rogers, this scrawny kid from Brooklyn,
Yeah.
can do this. They don't want him to take the super serum. So with Erskine explains that it's not about the brawn and how big you are, it's about the heart inside. Because he did try it on another person, Johann Schmidt, who is in Germany, and it became disastrous results.
Yes.
So Schmidt, who is also known as the Red Skull because of the disastrous results,
Yes.
decides, hey, we found the Tesseract, and he's going to use that technology to make super weapons.
Yeah, he wants to destroy. Yeah, he just
He just wants to
he
destroy.
just wants to destroy. So Red Skull ends up being the main villain in this movie.
Which you don't really see afterwards.
Yeah.
But he does rule over an organization called Hydra.
Yes, they're like a Nazi subgroup.
I think they're... Yeah, I guess it's a subgroup.
Yeah.
Okay, so they decide Rogers is going to take the super serum.
Mm-hmm.
So with all this pomp and circumstance, they give him the serum. He becomes more muscular, taller, and more strong.
Yes.
And while they were doing the experiment, there was a spy in the room and kills Erskine.
Mm-hmm.
And you come to find out later that Erskine was the only one with the super serum formula. And the only way of unlocking that is through Captain America's Steve Rogers DNA.
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of having Rogers actually fight in the war, like any common sense person would, they decide to make him a propaganda tool.
And he's like a circus monkey.
Yeah, he's basically a circus monkey to sell war bonds. I mean, he has a getup, he has the girls in the background, he's punching a fake Hitler.
He's got the stars and stripes and everything to get the American people on board.
Exactly. So when he's touring these camps, he comes to find out that his best friend Bucky's unit was captured, and no one was trying to help them.
Yes.
They just decided that they were a lost cause. We're losing people every day. So Rogers wasn't having that. He was like, nope, he's my best friend, and I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
So he single-handedly infiltrates a Hydra base, saves everyone, including Bucky.
Yep.
And that's how his Captain America persona came out, because he was actually wearing the Captain America suit. So Captain America comes back with all these soldiers. I think he saved like 400 of them. And he's like, hey, I know about the other Hydra bases. I saw the map. And
yeah, so he gets himself a team together, himself and
Bucky.
And several other troops.
And they're called the Howling Commandos.
Mm-hmm.
So while doing this, they try to take down Hydra, of course. Schmidt got away from the base that Bucky was held at,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to defeat every single base remaining on the map.
Yeah.
But while doing this, unfortunately, my heart hurts. This is my saddest part of the movie. So the Howling Commandos, including Bucky and Captain America, they find a train which they believe that a lot of the weapons are on. But while doing this, Bucky falls to his death. Once again, air quotes falls. Well, he technically falls.
Falls
but
to his death.
air quotes, yes.
Yep.
And, of course, Rogers is very sad about this. But, you must go on. So he's still trying to take down Schmidt. And he gets intel of where the final Hydra base is. And he learns that Schmidt wants to use weapons of mass destruction against all the major American cities.
Yeah, and he's got a plane full of weapons, like, ready to go, too, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And so Rogers gets on the plane and defeats Schmidt. Technically the Tesseract defeats.
The Tesseract ends up cracking, revealing that Infinity Stone.
and he tries to hold it, and it burns him to a crisp.
Yes.
So we learn that you cannot hold the soul stones, or infinity stones, without proper protection.
Yeah. They're just so powerful that they'll just melt you.
But because the airplane has a whole bunch of weapons of mass destruction, and it's heading straight for New York, and there's no way for them to pilot it away from there, Captain America decides to make the ultimate sacrifice.
Yes.
He decides to crash it into the ocean because at least, he might die, but at least there's millions and millions saved.
Yeah, for sure.
And when he's crashing, he's talking to Peggy, and they're saying their final goodbyes and how
that's the worst part of the whole movie.
I know.
It's so sad.
And they're going to have a dance the next week,
Mm-hmm.
which, of course, never happens.
Yeah. And
then you come to find out, time jump all the way present day, you see that Rogers is actually alive. And he wakes up, and he freaks out because he's in a SHIELD facility. Because he heard a baseball game that he knew he was there, so it couldn't be right.
Yeah.
And he freaks out, and he runs into Times Square, and he learns that he's been asleep for 70 years from Nick Fury. With the post-credit scene, we see Fury telling Rogers that there's a mission that could save the entire world and the important things in life, and we know that he's now alluding to the Avengers initiative.
Yes, we hear even more about this amazing group of talented folk. So a couple important points from Captain America, the First Avenger. We definitely see the Tesseract for the first time and the power that it can hold. And we also see a lot of Howard Stark, and he kind of reminds us of Tony a little bit.
It's important to point that the loyalty and friendship between Bucky and Cap is very strong.
Yes.
I feel like they'd do anything for each other. I mean, he invaded a base all by himself.
Yeah.
So I feel like that loyalty is very strong, which kind of leads up to more interesting points.
Yeah, we're going to see a lot more of that in the cinematic universe and hopefully in the upcoming movies.
Yes, hopefully. It also shows that Steve has this sense of right, that when he believes that he is right, he will not back down, which becomes more prevalent and more important when you go down the line with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so wrapping up Captain America, I think we're ready to talk about the Avengers.
Yeah!
The Avengers came out in 2012, and it features all of these awesome characters that have been developing. We've got Tony Stark and Steve Rogers and Thor and Loki and Bruce Banner, Natasha Romanoff, Clint Barton, or Hawkeye. I guess we haven't mentioned his name yet. We see Dr. Eric Selvig again, and of course Nick Fury and Phil Coulson of S.H.I.E.L.D. So the Avengers starts out in this secret S.H.I.E.L.D. facility, and Nick Fury and Dr. Selvig are running tests on the Tesseract, which they have recovered. And all of a sudden, guess what? Loki's not dead.
What?
He comes out of this wormhole type thing to retrieve the Tesseract. It's
unlimited power.
Yes, he wants all of that. Loki
made a deal with the Chitauri.
Yes.
Who wanted the Tesseract, and all Loki really wanted was to subjugate Earth and be the ruler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they destroyed his plan in Thor.
Yeah, and, he holds a grudge forever.
Yeah, so Loki ends up grabbing the Tesseract and creates this cool scepter thing out of it, which he then uses to kind of enslave Dr. Selvig to his power and his command, and is kind of now a minion of Loki.
And who else is there? Hawkeye. He also gets enslaved into
he
his
also
plan.
gets sceptered. So now Loki, he's got a S.H.I.E.L.D. scientist and an assassin on his team. He's running through New York City No, it's not New York City.
Germany.
It's Germany. He's running through Germany causing all of this mayhem.
Yes. So Loki destroys the base, of course, because he needs to get out of there, and that's the best getaway. And Fury, who has fury over the incident, I had to put it in there.
He's furious.
He's furious over it. Decides to make the Avengers initiative active.
Yes.
He feels like this is a threat to the world, and he needs the Avengers.
Oh, definitely.
I know. I was like, Loki? That's hardcore. So he needs to bring everyone together. So Romanoff gets Banner in Calcutta, which kind of hints back to Incredible Hulk.
Yes.
Because he likes, places that are not as crowded. And they tracked him because of his radiation, his gamma radiation. He actually...
Yes, they go and find Hulk.
And Fury recruits Rogers, and Stark is recruited by Coulson to look at Selvig's research to see if they can stop him in any way.
Yeah. All right, so Nick Fury assembles all of these Avengers in this really cool aircraft carrier, and they head
to Germany,
where Loki is using his minions to try to stabilize the Tesseract so he can better control its power.
So after you see everyone getting recruited for the Avengers initiative, you are actually taken to Germany to see that Hawkeye is trying to get this thing to stabilize the power of the Tesseract. And Loki, being the good boss that he is, decides to make a distraction for him. And after that distraction, Cap comes in and actually starts attacking Loki. And it seems to be kind of equal match. And then Iron Man comes in with his AC/DC a-blastin' and decides that, hey, you know what? Time's up, reindeer games. And
yeah.
And actually Loki surrenders, which is weird.
Very weird.
Very weird.
It's like, okay, that was easy.
Yeah. So they actually get Loki onto the helicarrier, and then they're in the middle of the sky when they hear a thump on top of the airplane.
Who is that, you ask?
It's Thor.
It's Thor.
And because he heard thunder, and they even asked Loki, they were like, oh, thunder, there's not storm today. And he's like, I don't like what comes after. So we come to find out that Thor comes in and takes Loki from the helicarrier. And, of course, Cap and Iron Man ain't going to have that. So they decide, they're going to battle it out. So
yeah,
they battle
they're trying
it out.
to take him back to Asgard.
Yeah, so Thor's trying to take him back to Asgard, and he says, Loki, Loki, stop your madness and come back to Asgard for us. We need you. Not really need you, but more of love you and stop your madness. And, of course, Loki ain't having it. He wants his plan. And while doing so, Iron Man and Cap don't know who Thor is. This is this rogue element.
Yeah.
And they decide that you're not going to take Loki. What happens if you're part of his plan? And they decide to fight it out. So after they fight it out, Thor agrees that they can question him to learn where you're trying to find the Tesseract. Because Tesseract is alien tech, and he feels like Thor needs to protect it. And the world, because he's quite fond of Earth because of his lady love of Jane. Okay, so then the Avengers start actually arguing about what Loki's plan is up to. And it starts to make this horrible discourse in between them.
Yeah, it's
the
super
rift,
tense.
Yeah, where they're all basically just insulting each other.
They're just ready to, tear each other's throats out.
Exactly, but we come to find out that that was part of Loki's plan. He was just trying to make a distraction.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Hawkeye is tasked with kind of taking down this helicarrier and causes mayhem. And, eventually the Hulk goes off and
Thor's like, what the hell?
They're like, what the heck is going on? Nobody here has seen Banner transform into the Hulk.
He just seems like a meek little scientist.
Yeah, and at this point, he's still not super great at controlling it.
And then Hulk, because he's all raging, actually attacks a fighter jet and falls to Earth.
Yes.
He survived, luckily, just saying. He can't control his anger.
Luckily, the Hulk is pretty hefty.
Yeah.
Or Banner probably should have died.
Yeah. So they come to find out when the helicarrier was attacked that one of the engines is failing. So Stark and Cap are tasked to fix that engine.
Yeah, and Stark almost gets himself killed trying to restart the engine.
Because Cap can't even hit a dang button because he's getting attacked.
Yeah.
And then Romanoff is actually attacking a mind-controlled Hawkeye. And come to find out, when you hit someone really hard in the head, they stop being mind-controlled.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's this really, like, kind of intense scene where, well, yeah, maybe not intense, but Romanoff is trying to, like...
Reason with him?
Yeah, reason with him and kind of get him back to the Clint Barton that she knows.
The light side?
Yeah. Coming back to the light.
So, while all this is happening, Loki is actually still in the cell.
Yes.
But he uses his trickster ways to have Thor open the cell.
Yeah.
And of course, Thor being Thor, he runs into the cell where he thinks Loki's not in there, and it was just an illusion. Mm-hmm. Then poor Coulson.
Well, Loki drops Thor to Earth.
Yeah,
so Thor's not on the helicarrier now either. Yeah,
he just gets dropped. And Loki, being a mean person that he is, actually kills Phil Coulson.
Kills.
He got Yeah, kills, air quotes.
Air quote kills.
But
yeah,
stabbed with a scepter.
Yes.
Which kind of actually unites the Avengers in the end.
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of like their guilt trip to be like, okay, we have to get our act together.
For
and
Coulson.
we have to solve this problem.
Exactly. So, and then they figure out that Loki has a huge ego, and he wouldn't be happy with just defeating the Avengers. He has to make it a spectacle.
Yeah. So he opens up a wormhole.
In where? New York.
New York City, of all places. Of course it's in New York City. Yeah, so all these Chitaris, right, come out of this wormhole and
wreak havoc.
Yeah.
Destroy things, kill people.
There's a lot of fighting, a lot of epic scenes. Hawkeye is restored to his normal self and is able to help as part of the Avengers to
defeat the Chitauri.
Yeah, defeat the Chitauri and defeat Loki.
So they're all united because of Coulson's death. They, of course, go fight the Chitauri. They're doing great. Mm-hmm. The Hulk is being the Hulk, and he decides, guess what? He finds Loki. And you know what he does? You know what he does to Loki? He decides he's not having it and whips him around like a jump rope.
Yeah, that's
that's the best
That's
analogy.
Still a meme that I find quite often on the internet.
Yeah. Puny God.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great scene. But it ends with the World Security Council actually calling in
a nuke strike.
A nuke strike, basically, to destroy the Chitauri, but also destroy all of the people in New York City to try to put a stop to this.
I think it was like overreaction.
That was a crazy move. Like, they're going to just kill millions of people.
Yeah. And then, with Stark being awesome and amazing the way he is, decides, you know what, I'm going to play the hero move. He intercepts the missile, and where does he put it?
He flies it up to the wormhole.
Because, of course, that's the first place. And while doing that, he was trying to say his last goodbyes to Pepper. It wasn't really working out. The call didn't connect.
The wormhole is closing, and
he thinks he's dying.
He's going to be trapped in here.
The missile hits the mothership, so there's not going to be any more Chitauri.
Right.
But his suit actually malfunctions. Mm-hmm. And he's falling. And he's either going to be stuck in this weird world, or he's going to fall to Earth and die.
Yeah.
And you come to find out that he barely made the wormhole in time.
Yeah.
So he's still in New York. But
he's plummeting to the ground.
And everyone's gathered around him because they think he's dead. And all he wants to do is get shawarma.
Yeah.
He wakes up and that's all he wanted was to get shawarma.
That's the first thing that he talked about.
So Thor takes Loki and the Tesseract back to Asgard.
Yes.
Because he felt like it was too powerful for the humans to have, and Loki is just a menace, and it's his own doing. He's in Asgard. And so then Fury, because his plan worked for the Avengers Initiative, thinks that he's like, yeah, this is going to work. If anything happens, we got you.
It's like this team is here.
Yes, exactly.
And not aware of some of the adventures that are going to
happen.
Ensue.
So what was the post-credit scene?
The post-credit scene, we have the others saying that they failed with their attempt to
take over
Tesseract and take over Earth and kill everything in their path. And we see a strange, large purple man sitting in a chair. Like, he's just smiling, like...
Eagerly.
Yeah.
Just, like, evilly. Just like...
And this is our first glimpse of Thanos. We haven't heard any mention of his name, I don't believe.
I don't believe so.
So, we have no idea.
We don't technically know his name is Thanos.
Yeah. His name isn't mentioned. And yeah, it leaves lots of questions to be answered. And then on the other post-credit scene, it's a great clip of the Avengers sitting around a table.
All quiet.
Just quiet, eating their shawarma.
He got what he wanted, though,
He did. He got what he wanted.
So...
All right. Why don't we go over some important points?
Okay, so there's a lot of important points. So it shows that S.H.I.E.L.D. is morally ambiguous to just life in general. I mean, they wanted the Tesseract, but they mainly wanted it because they were scared of people like Thor. They needed to be on the same playing field.
Yeah, they're trying to make weapons to like you said, even the playing field.
And then, so you saw a lot in this film how Stark and Rogers had butted morally, I would say. They both had different ways of doing things, and they had a lot of trouble deciding who was the leader and what path they should take.
Yeah, there was definitely power struggle there, but the good thing is that they came together when they needed to.
Yeah, I think it showed that Stark was kind of jealous of Rogers because his father talked about him so much.
Yeah.
And then the hint of romance between Banner and Romanoff. I didn't really feel it, but apparently it was there. I was more like Clint and Natasha.
Maybe a little bit when Hulk was raging and Natasha was
like
trying to like freaking out and then trying to like
help him.
Yeah, help him stop him from transforming, and you definitely can tell that she cares a lot about him.
Yeah. And then Clint and Natasha's, you could hear a little bit about their backstory, about how he saved her from a lot of stuff that she didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And how close their bond is.
Yeah, definitely.
And then how powerful the Hulk is. Like, he was destroying buildings, and especially between Thor. I mean, you gotta think Thor's a god.
Yeah.
And he was, like, beating him up. And Loki.
Yeah.
So, like,
yeah, for that matter. Yeah, he's crazy.
And then how Loki is manipulative towards his brother and tricks him a lot. I mean, he's a trickster, but, you know,
definitely.
gotta have some love there. And yet shows how big of ego he has.
Mm-hmm.
An interesting thing that I noticed that I never really noticed until I watched the Avengers again is that Loki actually mentioned that the humans think they're immortal, but they're not. So there has to be something that kills them. I always thought Thor was immortal, in all honesty. I mean, yeah, he got injured, but like...
Yeah, I don't know.
But apparently
I don't think I picked up on that.
I don't think they're immortal, so that could lead up to some things.
Yeah.
And
although Stark really likes to push Banner's buttons.
I do. Yeah, I saw that too, but I kind of like that because it was showing that even though Banner even revealed in the movie that he was angry all the time, he has a slight control over it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not much, but...
But it also kind of shows that Stark trusts Banner.
Yeah.
Like, by kind of, like, poking at him. Like...
Especially with, like, the...
He's like, oh, he's fine. He's not going to turn into the Hulk. Like...
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's blind trust, but it's something.
I kind of felt Roger's guilt, though, too. Because remember how it was the super serum?
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like Rogers was like, if I didn't get the super serum, then all this horrible stuff wouldn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, if he wasn't a successful super soldier, then a lot of things
wouldn't have happened.
Probably could have been prevented because people wouldn't be trying to recreate it. You know?
And then, like, I think a lot of people forget that Banner explicitly mentions it, that he tried to kill himself. He tried, but the monster spit out the bullet. Yeah. So I mean that's more dark, and I don't think a lot of people. Super dark. I don't think a lot of people mention that. Yeah. Like when I talk Avengers with people, they're like, "They said that." And I was like, yeah. It's like you did pick up on that. Yeah, no, he definitely did. He's got some big issues that. Yeah. But it makes Banner who he is, and you get to see more of him. Yep. All right, I think that's everything we have for you guys today. Yeah, so that was phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We walked through Iron Man all the way through Avengers Tune in next week for Phase 2, which is Iron Man 3 through Ant-Man. Like, comment, and subscribe to Assemble, our podcast. And I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Mallory. Thank you guys for listening.
Bye.